main for a second. So welcome back. Happy New Year to everybody. So today we have, we're just going to start out with our speaker, our guest speaker, Lindsay Love. She's here with us from Western's Wellness and Accessibility, and she's going to give a presentation. So we're going to start with that. And then Jacinta will give some updates at the very end, but we want you guys to have some time to ask questions, etc. So we'll just get started. We'll turn time over to you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Brooke, and thanks to you and Jacinta for inviting me. I really have been looking forward to speaking with this group. I know I like to tell people that I started in GUWestern when I started working at Western, so I'm familiar with the program and what you all do. So I think it's great work, and I think it's a good opportunity for me through you to reach our students that, you know, are served through the GUWestern program and maybe coming to Western, maybe dual enrolled in college classes here while they're going through their high school experience. So I just put together a pretty brief presentation, and then hopefully I can answer any questions you might have at the end of it. And I have this really annoying cough. I've been trying to get sick for like 2 weeks, so bear with me there. I'm just gonna screen share. Okay. This is like one of those things, if you don't do it very often, you have to kind of figure it out. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Yeah.
Yes, it looks good. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks. So I work in the Wellbeing and Accessibility office on campus here. And we serve both our on-campus students and also students at our outreach sites. You all may be aware that we have a pretty large enrollment with dual and concurrent students. So we see a lot of the younger high school kids that are taking classes and preparing for college also. And so my office offers counseling, mental health, and disability services. And then this is our staff. We just recently hired a new director. That's Ryan Allen. We've kind of been trying to steer the ship without a director for about 6 months now, so we're really excited to have him on board. And then in addition to myself, we have Dariana, who's our office assistant, and Maya Boren, who is a case manager and peer specialist. So if you're not aware of what peer specialists do, they have specific certification that allows them to kind of relate to students and people who've experienced trauma or suicidal ideation. And so Maya is a really great mental health resource for our students and staff here. And then we do have 2 part-time contract counselors that provide in-person counseling services, Jennifer and Thomas. So that's who's working here currently and how we break that down. As I said, we provide counseling services to students who are taking 1 or more college credits at Western. So we've had students take advantage of our services who are taking a yoga class for enrichment or something. So, and then we see all the way up to our full-time traditional age, you know, enrolled students. We have programming and activities to support student mental health. We can refer to community resources if that's something that's needed. We partner with different community agencies such as the Department of Voc Rehab, our school districts, and like Southwest Counseling or different mental health resources out in the community too. We also provide education opportunities for faculty and staff. Drug and alcohol prevention, and then we do little campus activities. We partner with Student Life pretty frequently to just kind of do some fun things here on campus for students. Another thing that's fairly new to our office is that we offer online counseling through a service called GUWestern, and they specialize in counseling services for college campuses. And so that's a great thing for students in our outreach sites. I believe as long as you're a student at Western, even if you are a minor with parental permission, you could have access to GUWestern services. And our counselors know a little bit more about that, but students have access to 8 sessions through GUWestern. Students can also meet with our on-site counselors via Zoom if needed. So there's just a lot of mental health services that students have access to through both our on-site and online counseling. And I did give Jasita some flyers for this in case you have students who might be interested. There's a QR code. It's pretty easy to get started with that. And so then what I do, I'm the accessibility and disability specialist here at Western. And so I work with students to put accommodations together for their college classes. In your positions, you may work with students who receive special services through K-12, through either an IEP or a 504. You might have heard of those things. I do recall when I was in Europe, there was quite a few students who had some of those services that were then, working to transitioning towards college. So that does present another barrier on top of maybe, being a first generation student or, some of those access barriers. A student with a disability comes into college, especially at that traditional age where it's really critical that they receive those transitional services. So it's great that you guys are on the ground in the school districts working with those kids so that when and if they decide to go to college, you can refer them to my office for both mental health support, but also for disability accommodations. And any institution that your students decide to attend is going to have someone who does what I do. Obviously, the bigger institutions will have offices with, more than one person, but they'll have a process for providing accommodation to students with disabilities. So this is just kind of a list of, general list of who qualifies. So a disability is defined as a condition that results in a major impairment to one or more activities of daily living. So this can be both, mobility, visual, hearing, but it also includes thinking and learning. So your students with learning disabilities, with ADHD, those kind of diagnoses may also qualify for services. And then students who maybe have a concussion or broke their right arm and they are right-handed, something like that, and pregnant students may also qualify for accommodation. And before I get into this, I just wanted to kind of point out, once the student, well, maybe it would make sense to do it after this. So this is basically the application process. The student should provide documentation. So if you have a student that you're kind of referring to my office from special services, it's generally helpful to have their most recent IEP or their 504 plan so that I can kind of take a look at the services they received in K-12. And some of those services will transfer to their post-secondary education. Some of them don't quite go straight across. So that's where I meet with the student to kind of explain their rights legally as someone who identifies as having a disability, and also what's reasonable for the college to provide as far as accommodation goes. So once they complete the application, they meet with me. We kind of review the documentation, and then I just have a conversation with them to see, what kind of things helped you in the past. What kinds of classes are you thinking of taking at Western? And I just work with the student to determine what those services are going to look like. So pretty frequent accommodations that we provide are like testing. So extra time for testing, maybe testing in a separate location. We provide, like audiobooks, things like that for students that may want to take advantage of something like that. We ensure captioning for online content. So, and I partner with like the Center for Teaching and Learning a lot for some of those online technologies if you have students who are taking online classes. And so I just kind of work to coordinate all of that with instructors and campus entities that might be involved in the provision of those services. We also ask students to check in every semester and renew their accommodations. They can let me know how it's going, see if we need to make any adjustments. And then I really like to be a resource for faculty and for staff that may have questions about how accommodations work or how to provide those accommodations. Um, I like to be invited out into the community. I've done exit meetings with special services over in Green River, so that's been a really great experience. And I think the more transitional services we can provide for our students, the better they're going to do in college. And so getting them to me early is just really essential to ensuring that they have what they need to be successful at Western. And so this is just a little about your dual enrolled students. Um, if you have students who are receiving special services in high school, they do have to go through Western's accommodation application process before having those accommodations set up for their college classes, which is sometimes confusing for students. They just kind of assume that those services go directly over. And so that's some education that I'm trying to do with some of our people that are in our area high schools. And so that is where I open it up for any questions you might have. How many of you were aware that that was the process for your students receiving accommodations in college?
I've been learning since I've been managing our freshmen. So I think that's really good because I think it's kind of hard for us because I can't like specifically like ask questions about like an IEP or 504. So I'm hoping that with educating our advisors that if you guys know if you have a senior who's coming to Western, that we know that so we can get accommodations set up. And I guess I didn't know too, like I have one student who said he does work with is it
Voc Rehab?
Voc Rehab.
Yeah.
And I just learned about that last semester and how I think he said too, he was getting some like financial assistance
Mm-hmm.
from them as well. So I wasn't aware of that at all. So that was really good to know. But I don't know, do they qualify? Like if they reach out to you, is that something that you would know that they qualify for, or do they have to do that on their own?
Or if the student qualifies with Voc Rehab?
Yeah.
Yeah, generally, I mean, I think there are different areas that are better at it than others. I mean, Voc Rehab is one of those, big government agencies that's overstretched all the time. I know that the Rock Springs office is really good about trying to get into our local school districts here. So a lot of times the students will be aware of those services as they kind of go through and exit out of their SPED programming in K-12. Sometimes they don't even know to go there, but it's kind of considered one of those transition services too, where they can do job placement, they can kind of explore careers and what might be a good fitting career. A lot of times if I have a student that comes in and they haven't talked to Voc Rehab, I then refer them to Voc Rehab. So we go back and forth a lot, just because they may not be aware of those services. So it's not like automatic, it doesn't seem like to me. It's just how open the school districts are to having people come in and kind of educate their students about what's out there for them. But they do have funding, and that's a really great motivator to get those students to make appointments. But it can be a process. I've heard, it can take 5 to 6 months to really go through their full process if you don't have the ball rolling when you finish high school. So yeah, anything we can do to get these students to some of these services before they come in the door at Western is just a huge step.
So with the students who graduate and come here, do they need to bring you like a physical copy of their IEP or 504?
They can. I know when I've gone to Green River, they give them this big packet of paperwork. I can request their records too.
Okay, good.
Yeah, they just sign a release with me and I get a hold of the SPED office and I can request their documentation. So if they haven't kept track of it, it's no big deal. And we can put accommodations in place at any point in the semester, so they don't have to come see me at the beginning. if, like Jasita, if you find a student as they start their freshman year and you're like, oh, okay, it's October, I can still put accommodations in place at that point, so.
Okay, good. Does anybody have any questions?
What if they don't have accommodations during high school, but you find I have a girl who's getting ready to graduate and she's starting to have medical problems?
Mhm.
Can they come and speak to you about that? How do they get those in place, even though they didn't have it in high school?
No, that's a really good question. So, outside of special services, students that might have, either some mental health things going on or some, medical issues that come up, we can get documentation from their providers. So, whatever doctor they're working with to address some of those medical needs can provide that documentation too. We've taken information from like a counselor or someone that's working pretty closely with the student that may have like major depressive disorder or something like that. So I think if you have a student that is kind of in that area, if you refer them to me, then I can definitely give them the next step to take in order to receive services for some of those things outside of what they would have qualified for through like a SPED program. Um, and it's the same thing. They just fill out a release of information, and then I work with them to kind of get that documentation so that we can see what accommodations will be helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you ever have any questions, please just reach out. And I know Lindsay and everybody in the office are so helpful and wonderful to work with. So if you don't have a question right now, or you get, later on, or you like Melissa, if you have a student, some other things come up, like, please let us know, because there are ways to help make sure they get accommodations when they start school here.
Yeah, and if you have questions, I mean, you're never wasting my time. One of my favorite things to do is work with staff, so that we can kind of all work together to make a more inclusive institution. Because I feel like the more inclusive we are, the more successful our students are. And I think that, disability inclusion is a big part of that. And I'm seeing Brianna wants me to share accommodations that we're able to provide. My chat went away. Okay, are they as vast as public school? Yeah, to touch on that, Brianna, you'll see some kinds of supports on like an IEP that have a lot of individualized, like the students pulled out for additional math support. I've seen some where like the students allowed to retake exams. Some of those things won't transfer directly to a college course, because what makes an accommodation reasonable is basically that it does not affect the rigor of the course. And so in cases like that, we really have to take kind of an individual approach to what the student is requesting, like looking at the course outcomes for each class, and just making sure that it's not impacting the essential learning outcomes for that class. We also refer students to like the peer tutor center for additional support if they need more help with math or something like that. So we have some of those things in place that are available to all students that are attending school, but it's not necessarily that we're providing someone to work with the student one-on-one as an accommodation. So yeah, I don't want to say like more narrow. We kind of refer to it like in this field as the interactive process. You'll hear them throw that phrase around. So each request made by the student is considered on a case-by-case basis, and they may differ depending on what class that student is taking. So the best thing is just to get them to my office, and then we can kind of hash that out. But yeah, I would say the accommodations aren't quite as tailored. Maybe isn't the right word, but not as as vast as the accommodations they might receive in high school. Another difference is that, when a student is identified for services at the K-12 level, the parents or the educators are looking at the student in the classroom and then, saying, okay, I think this student needs additional services. Where at the college level, the student has to self-identify with my office. And so that can be kind of a hard bit of self-advocacy for some of our traditional age students. They might not be as comfortable going in and saying, this is what I need. So it's kind of a balancing act of trying to help them work on that advocacy and also making sure that they're, again, transitioning out of that K-12 environment and becoming more comfortable with asking for what they need. You're welcome. And Jacita, I can send you a little more information, like a little packet with our application. I have a little form that compares and contrasts like high school versus college services. That might be helpful for you all to take a look at.
Sure.
So
That's great.
yeah, I'll send that out after we meet and then you can distribute it. And then I'm here if anyone has any questions. If you think of something after the fact, you can just shoot me an email or talk to Brooke or Jacita and they can get it to me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. We're just gonna go over the agenda real quick with just a couple things. So our family event, the chili cook-off and the financial literacy is January 25th. And the deadline to RSVP is January 10th, which is this week. So all the marketing material for that is on OneDrive. So we just ask that you just help us market it to our families. We did send out a remind right before break. And then we also sent out like a postcard, like a mailings to all of our families. So just keep that when you're talking to your students and your families. I know some of you have like FAFSA nights and meetings and stuff coming up. Just mention that to them and let them know to RSVP so we can get a good head count, especially for our food. Does anybody have any questions about that event? Okay. We do have our state training. I believe Brooke sent out a calendar invite. It is April 14th through the 17th. Usually they'll send us out an agenda. Anyone's always welcome. Our advisors are always welcome to attend those. We would just need to know. That way we can make sure we get you hotel. And either you can take a Western vehicle or your own for mileage reimbursement. And the last thing is, we did get everyone set up with a FAFSA portal and assigned user accounts just for your specific school. So you'd be able to like look up your students and making sure if they have FAFSA. And I can't remember because we didn't have access last year, but I do think like if they had like a verification, it might say that on there. So that's just like a good way to follow up with your students if they did receive an email that they're trying to verify something on their account. So once we have all that, we'll send that out to you. But I'm pretty sure Bambi was working on that right before we went on break. But that's really all we had. It's pretty short. Does anybody have any questions on anything? Okay.
I have a question, Jacita.
Yes.
Do you know what book club meeting is going to be?
I do not. I know we just got the books in while we were on break, and they're sitting right here in our office. I know. Did you guys get those mailed out to you directly if you were interested?
Make sure I read the right amount of chapters in time. I didn't know if she'd set that or not when we were doing what.
I'll let Bree answer that if she wants to answer that in the chat, or she can send out an email regarding that. Someone will get back to you. She said she's gonna send an email out. Okay, great. Does anybody else have any other questions? Well, happy 2025. Seems kind of crazy that we're already here. If you need anything, please reach out, email us and we'll get back to you. But other than that, we're done. Thanks for coming. And as soon as Lindsay gives me some more information, I'll make sure I can share that with everybody. But thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Bye.